right, Joshua, here we are for our How to Be Human interview, where we're going to dive into what it's been for you being a human, people that inspire you, and just get to learn either your practices, other people's practices that inspire you, and just kind of take a deep dive on life being a human. Um, Thanks for joining us today. Love having you here.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Yeah. Welcome to 2022, of course, because it's what, the 5th of January. So like first big project of 2022. Way to hit it off there. We're going for some co-creation and some support and play today. So those are our words of the moment here. So I think, Joshua, what we're going to do is we're just going to walk right into this first question and see what comes up for you. And we're just going through the How to Be Human prompt list. And for the viewers there, we've got those attached to the side if you want to follow along. So first question is, Joshua, how to be human? What is the best integration of humanness?
And there are so many places we could start. The best integration of humanness would be an aggregation of the things that we exist within biomechanically. I have a body. Within that body, I have organs that are working together to pump blood through my system, to animate me, to be able to navigate around this big rock that's floating through space. Like that's, base level stuff. And then knowing that beyond just me walking around this rock, that there are other people in similar get-ups having their own experiences and having their own choices and their own foibles and their own wobbles. And there's so much occurring at any given time, and I'm leaving most of it out. So I think that's one of the main things in terms of integrating is an acceptance of relative ignorance, I suppose. Like, hey, I think I know quite a bit. And in practical terms, I really don't have my hands around much, So I think in terms of integrating and being human, the acknowledgement that I'm basically a loving moron, saying that in a sweet way. It's like, oh, I'm learning, I'm integrating, I'm expanding, I'm growing in this body as I'm walking around this rock. Just an acknowledgement that I can never know it all and that I'll never get it right or finished is a great first step. I think if I walk up the awareness spectrum, I could probably see, we could talk for hours about, going off into sort of like the psycho-spiritual space and the ephemeral stuff in the ether, like sort of the infinite oneness types of things. And that's all a fun place to go too. And I can get lost there super, super easy. Like you put me out there, I'm like, oh, put me out there in space. I'll be out there with all the fantastic stories and all the pretty colors and blinky lights. And it all makes sense to me there. But then in practical terms, like you said, how do you integrate all of that? And what I've discovered more and more is that regardless of practice or program or tone or role, that there's I've been given a gift as a human to connect through my heart, like the center of my chest, the organ itself, the space within my body. This becomes the integration point where I have the opportunity to exercise myself as a participating member of humanity. And it's a way that I'll just go ahead and just say I've got the belief that that's a way that I can connect with you. It's a way I can connect with our audience. It's a way I can connect with anyone in the street or in any realm that we happen to pass through in our day-to-day lives. I think it's a feature. Certainly it's a concept and kind of like a program that the heart space is a place that I can connect to humanity through. But what I have learned, discerned, and experienced is that anything that keeps me grounded and connected to what's up in the top comes together right here in the center. So if you talk chakras, yeah, the fourth chakra is the thing. If it's strictly, just your, the space that you feel love, compassion, empathy, the space in the physical body where that tends to show up most prevalently amongst people. You know, if we had to run a loose experiment and say, where do you feel love in your body? People would give different answers, but I'd venture to say that many sample would likely say right here in my chest. So in terms of integrating humanness, that's where it lives for me. And it's work for me to stay there. You know, I think there's a big piece of me that likes to bypass that and like wants to experience life in different places. And it's a reminder, a gentle reminder to come back into my body, and that this is the arbiter, this is the place that if I'm up for being in humanness and integrating with humanity, that all of the stuff from up top and all the stuff coming up from beneath is going to come together here and flow out through that spot.
Wow. I love that. Everything's coming down, everything's coming up, connecting through the heart. I heard two things in there that you said. One was kind of a play around the acceptance of ignorance.
Yeah.
And then obviously the second part there of integrating through the heart, what's above, what's below, and that connection space. I was curious if you had any examples or could share, how you've gotten to a place where you're willing to accept your ignorance and also continually connect through your heart.
Well, this is one of the fun things about language, because when I think about like accepting ignorance, said another way, it could be remaining curious. You know, there's a way of looking at it going like, oh, I would say that I'll do my best to speak from my own direct experience. Like this idea that I'm ignorant previously had carried a bit of a wrongness to it. Like, why would you want to be ignorant? That's bad. Like that's, point being is that, in a place where there are poles or, there's a dualism in place. I guess the way it's happened, it's come through for me in my practices is rather than judge something as good or bad, ignorance always has the opportunity to become wisdom. So there's like a fighting chance for the ignorant to transform into wise. Whereas if something's been named wrong or bad, kind of hard to make it good or right. So like there's a difference there that's important for me to distinguish.
I really like that. What came up for me there was the word redemption, the possibility for being redeemed. And, perhaps that's what all transformation is this turning of the dial into ignorance, into wisdom, into ignorance, into wisdom, again and again and again. Yeah, redemption. That word's been swirling a lot for me recently of, even kind of going through these questions. We'll see if it comes up again. Thanks, Joshua. I think
the second part to that question, there was a second.
Yeah. Connecting through the heart. So the second part was accepting your own ignorance, remaining curious, which we kind of retermed it as, and connecting through the heart. As above, so below, connecting through the heart.
What comes up for me in exploring that idea is this concept of concern-free living. And there's a lot we could probably unpack it with that, but I have a socialized self that's come up through my life experience that impacts how I choose to show up in conversation, in relationship, relative to a group, all these types of things. And with respect to connecting through the heart, the root of courage is heart. There's like the coeur, French root, is the root of the word courage. And there's this sense of fearlessness, but like concern-free, egoic, like being concern-free of my own inner judgment of selves, of how I might be experienced. So like a direct example of how that would be is if I feel attracted to somebody and I am actually feeling a high sense of affinity for that person, but say that person has been married, okay? Is it if I'm living in a concern-free space, how do I share that in a way that conveys what I'm feeling, but at the same time is filtered and presented in a way that doesn't put the recipient of that potentially at effect? And that's kind of a blended answer, but in terms of connecting through the heart, it's like I would be out of integrity in this example if I didn't express that I've got affinity for this person. But then again, if I'm not measured or filtered in how I'm choosing to convey that, I'm never going to know how it's actually received. And I can't be, you know, I guess where I'm going with that is, instead of putting a perceived reaction over there, let's say it's with you, I'm going to tell Laura I'm attracted to her, but I know she's got a partner. Okay. Am I really muting my expression through the heart because I'm concerned about how that might impact her relationship? Or is it really, I just don't want to hear that it's not reciprocal? You know, so it's really easy to put a lot of stuff conveniently over there. And then if I'm living in a place from just expressing that, I've got to be willing to let that be. So there's a discernment piece, there's a courageousness to it, and then there's also got to be an absence of expectation, where I genuinely feel something, I need to express it to remain in integrity. And if I don't, it'll be a withhold that will stifle my creative flow, my energy.
Wow. And perhaps a little bit of resilience for, if anything does come up, some, to try again or open your heart again. I mean, I don't know if your heart closed is, but just that willingness to concern-free living and express what your heart is feeling, knowing that any other person, space might say no, or might not be in as open-hearted space as you are. Maybe it's a yes from them, but they are already committed, they have different principles of how they want to live their life. How have you moved through that, like with the resilience of continuing to express through your heart, connect through your heart, and the myriad of people that could, say whatever they say back to you?
It's a good question. And I suppose I've never been let down. I think there's certainly been periods of deflation or periods where it's like, oh, I've expanded that space, it's grown, and now I want to retreat or retract because, oh, it felt too big. Or, oh, I touched something there that I just didn't quite understand, or I couldn't control that. And, now that I'm, yeah, so what, I'm like, having gone through this for a couple of decades, it's never let me down. I think there's this knowingness that emerges where there is more benefit in expressing what's little t true for me. So there's awareness that that's what's cooking over here, rather than leaving that unsaid. And that has turned into what I would characterize as a pure energy practice, where it's not about power, it's not about security or approval or control. There's this understanding that if I remain willing to go there, that life itself life yet has not failed to surprise me. The outcome might look wildly different than my mind has manufactured something that I want to be. Like, I have a desire, I want it to look this way, and here's the pretty package I'm going to put it in. The more I practice or play in this space, I've just understood that it's kind of like program management 101. Like, you got to have a plan, but then you kind of have to toss the plan over here to kind of get to the real good stuff. And I'd say that's probably what has become the real dance of this game. Is something's up, needs to be expressed. How do I express it? Look for the timing, listen for how to do it. Okay, do the thing. Now the thing's done, move on. And
I love it.
Not tap my foot and be like, okay, so where's my surprise? I did all the work and now I want my goodie. It's like, well, the goodie was the practice. The goody was the experience of, oh, something in a circumstance moved me to such a degree that I felt, just this thrust to make a choice, to act in a certain way. And certainly that comes with grade. I mean, if being totally honest, there are certainly times I've made choices from, being in service in a cause, and other times they've been very self-interested, and like things that I'm going to do this because I'm trying to manipulate a situation. And then if I'm able to give myself a break and go, you're doing that thing again, and it gets you. And as long as you know what you're getting, just be good with that choice. And then don't be surprised when life serves you exactly what you're actually asking for, what I'm actually asking for.
Ooh. Okay. So we're kind of playing on two rings here of being curious. So being curious, accepting ignorance, like you're turning that into curiosity, and connecting through the heart. So if those are kind of what we're going off of as a human, integrating humanness, how do you think we could intentionally engage all humans to be more human?
It sounds like it's going to be a frustrating answer, but letting people have their reality. If I'm looking at getting people to connect to their own humanness, another offshoot of that is to be a human is to be in relationship. And if I'm looking at what relationship arguably is at its core, is three key components. You've got, do I share reality with another person? Do we communicate? And then what's our relative level of affinity for each other? And all of those, like, I like triangles. I think I might have said that, but I really dig just triangles as models. But I've failed to find an idea that boils down what we're getting at into crisper terms, where to get other people grounded intentionally in their humanness, I have to be willing to let them be who they are. I can't be in a place where I'm forcing my agenda on someone else. Like, my idea of being a heart-centered human is doing this and being all holier than thou, and eating a pious diet, and giving all your money away, or whatever the things are that seem to be important to people, to dedicating your life to the animals, like what all these noble things that we could be involved in, that are things that each of us came here to explore on our own. Like, we've got our own purpose for being here. We've got our own sets of experiences that lead us to what we're interacting with in any red hot minute. And holding a space where anything is valid and nothing is off limits is super tricky, but that seems to be a path that has worked. It's worked for me in the sense of practicing yoga, teaching yoga. Like, one of the things I remember going through one of my initial trainings decades back was practice teaching and having a teacher trainer, playing a role-playing game. Like, imagine you've got a room full of clowns coming in. You got to teach clowns how to do yoga. Okay, and now you've got a room full of people in business suits who come in and they're on their cell phones and they won't pay attention. You teach them yoga, and we're sort of playing this freewheeling game. And then the thing that took me out in that moment was the teacher said, everyone that's ever broken your heart just came to class and their hearts are broken. Teach them yoga. Ugh. And it's like, okay, so do I hold on to all of those things that, because in that moment it's like, oh, all the hurt and pain from all those mean things that happened, they're still alive in me in some way. And I'm still validating them, still retaining them. Well, everybody else who's having a human experience has that. So step one is, can I allow someone the space to be where they are? And then from that place, communicate either explicitly or implicitly or tactily. There's all these different dimensions that emerge from that trimodal model. It's like affinity, reality, communication leads me to a place where I'm able to create a relationship. with other
Mm.
people.
Mm.
Um,
So letting people have their reality. Sounds simple, but it's not easy. One of those. Um, or maybe it is easy with more practice.
it's like we had a conversation yesterday with a group that we're affiliated with, and the topic of that conversation for me was a totally different reality. I'm like, the article we're reading, the thing we're discussing, yeah, letting that group of people have their reality. I might not fully identify that, but I want to understand what is it in that storyline that contributes to that being the generated reality. Are there facts? Are there studies? What stories are coming in that are informing how that's being woven together? And if I'm able to offer, a modicum of that to anyone coming from any walk of life, someone from a different country, someone from a different political persuasion, someone from a different sexuality, someone from a different religious affiliation, like whatever that is like there's something behind why a person relates to a topic the way that they do. That is the root for them creating that reality for themselves. And that's what's genuinely rather juicy to me about connecting humanly, because I'm objectively never going to know the constellation of experience that happened to create Lara, right? Unless I'm curious enough to ask, well, tell me about what it was like when you moved around a lot, or what was it like? I had a friend, this is the example that's coming up. I had a friend, one of my best friends, whose parents were clowns for Christ. It's a real group. Like they would dress up like clowns and do these like pantomime shows for kids, which sounds like, to me, it's like the most absurd, wildly, like I'm throwing my judgments all over. But it's like, whoa, like that's just so different from my reality, but it's informed why that person feels the way they do about certain aspects of religion, like, but that's, if I didn't ask, I'd never know that. Like, wow, there's a group of people that do that. Like, okay, what else do they do? So I mean, that's just a bit of fun, and being in service shows up in different ways. But yeah, letting people have the reality, it's a tricky one. Yeah, it's especially where we are now culturally within the US, geopolitically, all those things are wildly challenging. Like, why do people feel the way they do about the pandemic? What inbound information has shaped the way that they view reality? Okay. And what are the things that have come into my field that I'm giving credence to? Just realizing, oh, it's all manufactured. Like you're just a person who's responding to information. And if I do my best to understand what information is being responded to, then it diffuses a lot of the crises to me, or the judgments around, like, you're crazy, or you're wrong for thinking what you do. It's like, actually, all of it's valid, and it's up to me. I've got to take personal responsibility to understand what's leading to that. I don't have to validate or accept that reality, but I can certainly take steps to understand where it comes from. And I think that's the piece that would help us move towards interconnectedness and humanness more. It's like, oh, we're story aggregators. And how are my stories similar or dissimilar to yours? And it's really no more complicated than that.
Sounds like the practice of connecting through your heart, moving through your heart is, in simple terms, listening with non-judgmentalness. And again, another simple but not easy, throwing your own, because you have your own stories, right? You're a human, you're releasing those, new information's coming in and whatnot. I really liked what you said there about letting people have their own reality, right? And your ability to do that. I sometimes like to move things around a little bit, but doesn't work so well. So I'm gonna hat tip to you on that, Joshua, and work on letting people have their own reality. I guess I got curious of, if people are having their own realities, who are some examples of humans and their realities that inspire you?
It comes to my mother, honestly. It's like step one. I have the benefit of having a genuinely devoted, loving mother, with whom I've had my challenges with over the course of my life. Like, we certainly don't have a perfect relationship, and we've had periods of utter closeness and periods apart. And now we happen to be in a space where we're, you know, old buddies, like best friends. But I would say finding something to appreciate in the morning, even if it's very general. I'm laying in a bed in a warm room. May take it even more simple. Like, these are her practices. Like, I can hear the birds sing. Oh, I'll take it a step inward. I can wiggle my toes. Oh, I'll take it a step inward. I have a heartbeat. My ears work, So I'd say that practice is something that I gained from her, which could be considered a prayer practice or an intention practice or an awareness practice. I would say her genuine concern for the well-being of others through nourishment and generating like a cozy home is something that informs how I choose to connect through my heart. Like, she does it through food, she does it through generating spaces, she does it through, or has historically done it through creating events for people to connect in community, block parties, their church groups, the choirs, the reunions, all these types of things have sort of fed into that. And then I'd say the example that's most wild to me, that this came out probably about 10 years ago, where I was asking her, okay, so my parents have been married for almost 50 years. And I said, how do you do that? Because statistically the odds are against you, in terms of longevity or whatever, just, people getting tired of each other or whatever. It's like, what is the thing? What's the secret sauce or the practice that you've maintained over all this time that's contributed to that? And her answer to me was, I'll make sure I get it as close to accurate as I can, but it was, your father and I never expected the other one to walk in the door at the end of the day, but we were always grateful when they did. And I was like, well, that is some like serious Tao, Buddhist presence practice, kind of happened there. It's like that totally upended my idea of what marriage is. In terms of connecting to the heart, like, there's this tone of surrender. There's this tone of interdependence that's conveyed in that, where it's like, I've got your back and you've got my back, and you may drift away, but my love's still going to be there for you. And when you do arrive home, I'm going to cherish the time that I have with you. And I'd say that, as a concept of how to generate relationships and to stay open-hearted, like in a tender-hearted, expanded space of trust and surrender, that's something that totally recalibrated how I approach dating, relationship, partnership, all of those types of things. And it's helped me be a better human. Like, it certainly comes from my mom, in that regard. 3 women that I know who used to live in Grand Island, Nebraska, who supported an annual bike ride that I participated in 2001, Tammy, Sue, and Nancy. They all have children with special needs. I met them as a participant on this ride, and what I learned from them is that there's always the possibility to be in service beyond self. So these are people who are fully subscribed in their lives, who have full-time jobs, family responsibilities, children to take care of who have special requirements and require additional help. And then on top of that, they're willing to just figure out how to feed 70 people as they roll through town on an awareness campaign. So, I think just the expanded sense of heart that those women had, I met them 20 some odd years ago now. That was another experience that I had that made me go, wow, they don't know me from Adam, but they believe in what I'm doing. And they're willing to ensure that I'm well taken care of so I can continue on my personal journey as an advocate. I'd say that, I haven't seen either of them now, any of the three of them in probably 12 years, but when I saw them in 2001 and saw them in 2011 when I was moving to San Francisco, I'm perpetually amazed at the amount of pure energy and drive that they had as a result of acting from their hearts, like just being in a state of surrendered service, being at cause and for other people genuinely, to a to arguable degree beyond their own well-being. It's probably so Tammy, Andrew, I love you three if you ever see this.
I think we're keying into something here. Everybody that you've described thus far is a mother, and perhaps there's something about being a mother that generates this heart space, or something that for you that really resonates for you of how to live and be in the world. It's beautiful. I love moms. So I like to take this question of, is there anybody else that inspires you with their practices, or are you ready for the question flip?
Well, let's see. Let me see if there's one more, because I'm inspired by so many people. Yeah, there's a guy on Instagram that I follow named Zion, Big Z 2020, I think is his handler, Big Z 2000. This really ripped black guy that doesn't have any legs, and his whole thing is no excuses. So it's, he always is posting videos of him skateboarding on his palms, or like monkey climbing up a bunch of bars, and like swinging around and just making light of his own different set of circumstances, and being really playful and funny about something that kind of puts a lot of people out. There could be stories around someone not being able to do something, or a limitation that's generated by the fact that someone's anatomy or physicality is different. And there's a court gestury type of feature that this guy has that always makes me giggle. For one, I'm like, it's amazing. And it also puts my own sort of, if the mopey me shows up, puts it in context. Like, all right, so yeah, you're a little butthurt because someone didn't call you back, or maybe that meeting didn't go the way you wanted to, but guess what? Zion got up and did his push-ups. Not suggesting or comparing that my physical body is in any way superior, but it's like, would I be as resilient or as up for my day on a regular basis if I were faced with that as a reality? And when there's some of that comparison or complementary analysis happening, it's like, well, there's nothing for me to complain about. So yeah, Zion, I'll get you his handle because he's just someone that I found. I was like, yeah, I can look at this every day and remain inspired. There is no reason for me to have a mopey bad day if Zion can get out there and do what he's doing every day.
Shout out to Zion. We'll put your handle in the notes. Awesome. So I also like to turn this question around, and some of the things that you said is one practice that you've learned from your mom of listening in the morning, listening to the birds outside, feeling your toes move or your fingers move, and then centering and feeling into the heart. First thing. I'm curious for you, because you're somebody that I enjoy, like what are some of the practices that you do? I understand you do that one from your mom, that you'd be willing to share with our audience that you feel helps you be more human. Anything that comes to mind?
Exploring breath is huge. If that's in a yoga context, if that's in a Wim Hof context, if it's box breathing, I think that that's a topic that you could jump off into many strata and have many different experiences in that exploration, the more I'm connected and aware of my breathing, the more human I perceive myself to be feeling. My feeling state seems to be more modulated or self-regulated, or I'm aware of what I'm feeling when I'm conscious of how I'm breathing. And it's a fairly standard practice that if my breath has escaped me or is shallow or short, that I'm not as here as I could be. And then giving myself the grace and compassion to say, hey, it's all right, just have this moment. Things are a bit shallow and a bit disconnected. And guess what? That's half of the equation of being a human, is drifting and then coming back. So having a sense of how I'm breathing, a conscious practice that can be a matter of moments or something eccentric and extended. I'd say if I'm not able to exercise, doing a simple exercise where I bring my arms out and up and down, do that 20 times, called the breath of joy. That can be a way of, it's a 3-part breath. Your arms come up, out, up, and then down. And it's 3 different inhales before you breathe out. So it's and a big and great, it's a big forceful exhale through the diaphragm. So some mornings, if I'm feeling really lethargic or disconnected from that, or kind of like I didn't really connect to my heart, doing that for 30 seconds will bring me in very quickly. So I'd say that's a breath hack that can work if you're looking for a quick physiological way of landing oneself closer to your center right off the bat. I think the other thing the thing that I would suggest that works for me is having the sensation of water pass through my esophagus and into my empty belly first thing in the morning as a way of connecting me to the space between my mouth and my gut. Heart's in the middle. So saying that as a previously chronically dehydrated person, that I relish the fact that when I wake up, I typically reach overhead for one of my half liters of water and chug it. So hydrating, a little bit of breath work are simple and easy things that can be done at any time during the day. I tend to do them right when I wake up.
Perfect. Love it. Breath work, movement, water, a lot of embodiment going on. Thanks for sharing that, Joshua. So this one, we might have already covered it kind of in your first answer, but let's see where it goes. What are easy reminders to be more human when some around us are walking and talking a little less human? Perhaps more, in quote, programmed, conditioned.
Help me modulate more or less. I'm not clear on.
Yeah, so I think to me, so it's for me, it's probably the struggle of what you already said of letting someone have their reality.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you can do that, whether it's a good reality, hurtful reality, whatever it is, and not be empathize too much into it to validate their story, to be more compassionate and sense that there may be suffering, but not take it on. Be kind to yourself in that moment. Those are 2 interesting steps because, I personally empathize a lot. So running into other people's stories where it seems like if I could just be compassionate and let somebody move through their own story, they might be able to learn rather than, kind of rescuer tendencies or whatnot. And if you don't have that, you sound pretty solid in your letting people have their reality. But I'm supposing at some point other humans, family members, friends have, maybe tried to draw you into their reality of whether it's suffering or drama triangle dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
If you are drawn into that space, how do you remember to let somebody have their reality?
What's coming up is being able to differentiate and switch between lack and sufficiency. And I'm like looking at, like, if I had to put a model on it, like my, a limbic way of relating to my gut would be like acting out of scarcity. You're like, there's something, if I don't get mine and I don't do something, then I am not going to survive, and then, okay, is that actually true? It hasn't been yet, So being able to personally shift into a space of abundance, sufficiency, enoughness, is the first step, where it's like, or another way of looking at it, another model that I like is, how do I say it? Like the bulk of the world arguably believes that life is happening to them. The circumstances of my life have been thrust upon me by external forces, by these power structures and all of these things. And these are the stories I tell myself, and I venerate them and keep them true. And it's like, okay, that can be true. And there's also a shift move to say, on some level, I'm choosing that. Now, people who are in that never want to hear that. So, people who are in drama don't want to be told, yeah, you're in drama. Yeah, I'm over here higher and mighty. I'm in creation and you are in drama. That's not the thing. But it's the idea of, if I can make the shift from lack to sufficiency, and then take my personal responsibility in the interactions that I'm having, which may be, if it's a reality mismatch, and there's a group of people who are committed to a reality that is just discordant from my as lived experience. Happens to me quite a bit. But it's like, and what I enjoy about it is just, again, seeing what is the thing that's driving that belief. And is it the fact that I don't have enough of something, someone needs the approval of someone else? So there's a security piece, an approval piece, and then a control piece. Like, I've got to control this, and if I can look at an organization, a group, a dynamic, and go, all right, that's what's present in that reality. How can I then be an example of surrender? So if control is the dynamic that's resulting in a deadlock in a discussion, what am I willing to give up in order to create space for something else to happen? Because otherwise, if it's just control here and control here with no surrender, there's just a locking of horns. There's actually no possibility of growth or expansion or connection in that. So it's a little bit about leaning into what's needed in the moment. That's kind of a abstract way of answering the question, but there's an opportunity I have in each moment to own a little bit more. I don't have to bear the brunt of the universe. I don't have to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders like Atlas. I can go, okay, in this red hot minute, the thing that it's valuable for me to do to stay neutral and available is to take a deep breath. That's how I can be responsible and model something that someone may or may not notice, but the reverberation or the contribution to that scenario can have a marked impact. If it's just, you're fighting for an ideal and I'm fighting for an ideal, and there's righteousness against righteousness, and it's like, okay, I can acknowledge that righteousness is in the space and that nothing's going to give until someone is declared wrong. Or I can just say, those are polarities that are there, and the best thing I can do right now is say, they're both valid. You believe you're right, you believe you're wrong, and both those viewpoints are valid. And I'm not outrightly accepting either of them. There's just an admission that, yeah, there's validity to it. It might be limited validity, but it's validity all the same. So an invitation to say, okay, I'm entrenched or rooted into a certain line of thinking, and going, well, if I'm able to acknowledge, okay, what is it, 5:23 p.m. and I'm committed to being right now. And I can create an awareness in someone to say, yeah, I am right now. That's the only thing that matters to me, is being right. It doesn't matter what the topic is or if anything good comes out of it. I just want to be right. Being able to break through that is enough in terms of generating that, inviting people to shift. It's a perpetual invitation. This idea of, I'm just going to keep offering, and I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to do the work and dig when, I've slipped into righteousness myself, because I believe what I'm doing is the right thing. Being in a certain tone of service is the right thing to do. Well, okay, I can probably tone the neutrality of that up a bit to be more human. Like, is it what's needed in the moment? Oh man, now I'm in my own inquiry. There's sufficient, lack to sufficiency. Is there a possibility for, even if it's a glimpse, for me to take increasing responsibility for my circumstances? It's not making someone wrong for believing that they've been victimized, or that they're being in a villainy role, or that they're exercising their hero, right? It's like, I'm a little more aware that I'm doing that right now. And I can either maintain that for the purposes of perpetuating the scene, because I'm getting something, there's something that's on some level vitalizing and enlivening for me to behave in this way. And then what would it be like if I tried on a different skin? Mm-hmm. And perhaps for me, that's where the fun thing in being kind of in a space of, a lot of my life is like, one of my preferred valences is the misfit or the outsider. Like, I love that. Like, if I have found so much humor, joy, creativity, and growth from playing those things, but there's also limitations with them. It's like, there are trade-offs. Like, if I'm the misfit all the time, am I actually connecting to anybody? Okay, well, the misfit's just a role, so who would I be if I gave the misfit up? And creating some playfulness in that space with people around, like, I'm actually creating this tussle. I'm creating this loving relationship right now in a certain tone of love. I'm creating this organization with an unreasonable lifespan. I'm creating a company that really, I know only will actually exist for 7 to 8 years, but I'm saying it's a lifetime consideration. Okay, how am I in or out of integrity around that? Yeah, those are just some things that.
So like owning where you are, owning who you are, what role you may be playing. And you mentioned it a couple times, moving from lack to sufficiency, and kind of with a wave of the hand up, lack to sufficiency. I was curious if you could break that down for our viewers of, are there steps to that? Is there a question to ask yourself? How does one who hasn't practiced it a lot start moving from lack to sufficiency?
It's a big question, and I probably could. I know I could get you some resources that would break that down. But in terms of I'm trying to think, like, what would be a good tool to? A very simple way of creating a quantified self version of that would be to look at your calendar over the last 2 weeks and do an exercise that I participated in called an energy audit, where it's write down everything I've done from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, including the time I sleep, 24/7 for 2 weeks. So slept 7 hours, got up, ate breakfast 25 minutes, answered emails 2 hours, blah, 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 was on a budget call, bing, 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 bing. Create that long punch list of activities. And then for every item on that list, you apply a down arrow if that activity took energy. You put a little hash mark if you're neutral to it, or you put an up arrow if it was enlivening. And the first time I did that exercise, I was still in a corporate role, in a job at the time that wasn't the best fit. And I discovered that almost 80% of what I was doing was draining my resources. So I was very much in a space of lack. I'm lacking energy. I feel tired all the time. I don't feel creative in this job. I don't feel connected to my, my leadership team, whatever it was. It's like there's this sense of lack, because what I was doing was genuinely depleting. Like it was just a question of fit. But then from there, the next step is take that list of 100 items or whatever it is and make choices around them. Like I have 3 options with all of them. The things that take my energy, I can either dump them, just cancel them and not do them anymore. I can delegate them to somebody else who is excellent or genius level at them, and surrender my need to control those activities, or choose consciously to do it differently. Like, okay, you know what? I really don't like sitting in a particular forecasting meeting or whatever it is, performance planning, whatever thing it might be, or, and just going, I'm going to consciously choose to come to this conversation with more openness. I'm going to consciously choose to come here and elect to enjoy it. Maybe not the whole time, but I'm going to, if it's an hour-long meeting, I'm just going to choose to enjoy it for as much as I can. Let's say I'll allow myself 20 minutes of 60 to enjoy it, and I'll give myself 40 minutes to not like it. But I'd say, that could be a way of identifying, if there is an experience of lack or consistent lack or scarcity in one's as lived experience, that could be a tool that would be useful to look at, and then say, okay, I don't need to make seismic shifts to this. I don't need to be at 100%. Everything in my life has me fully lit up all the time, but say, okay, over the course of the year, my number as of January 5th, 2022 is 30% of the stuff I do brings me to life. And, by the end of the year, I want to bring that up to 40 or 45%. It's a way of biting off something that's achievable without blowing all your fuses at once, and also being able to feel an expansion into sufficiency over time. I'd say, like, now the way I've got my life organized in the time since I first did that 7 or 8 years ago, it's north of 80% of my time is doing stuff that brings me to life. There's certainly like certain activities that I still do that I choose to do differently. Like I choose to enjoy cleaning the kitchen in my shared home because I like having a clean kitchen. I'm not going to gripe or bemoan people because I live with 6 other men and, my story is they're really dirty and they don't care about the kitchen. It's like, no, I cherish having a clean kitchen, and my gift to the house is ensuring that we've got a clean space to prepare food, not making them wrong because they don't hold cleaning the kitchen at the same level of esteem that I do, so it's that would be one way, and I think it's just kind of in the moment evaluating, like, in an interaction with someone else, am I really open to whatever may come, or is there an agenda behind it? Yes, so trying to get back to actually, lack to sufficiency, it's getting back to the heart. If I was to speak outside of turn in my role as a chief marketing officer, or as a direct report to whoever, or as a partner, if I actually said what I needed to say, without fear of being judged or losing the security I believe I have from the connection or relationship that I have, or losing the approval of that, the perceived approval of that can be a way of shifting, because it's like it just draws the locus of control back within over here. It's like, hey, if I'm creating my reality and my experience, and I'm actually responsible in my choice making, that's where I have to be generating that from. And there's enough over here to be able to distribute that. I can give you my whole heart, Lara, and I will still have more.
Abundance.
Yeah, it's there.
That's
it's
beautiful.
Ephemeral, but there's a truth in that about, there is enough. There's well-being is best expressed when shared. Love is only really there when it's being transmitted. If I'm withholding or kind of scrooging my love in my chest, I'm not really being love. I'm not really being heart-centered if I'm holding that for myself.
I love that. And you kind of described almost the process of, 7 or 8 years ago, you did this energy audit and found what was giving you energy, what didn't, and moved through the process where you can just ask yourself now and feel what gives you energy, what doesn't, and move yourself accordingly. I love it. It's beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah.
So our last and final question. I'm going to change the wording just a little bit to open it and expand it because I love the way that you can distill information for lots of people. How do we reconcile where we are with where we want to be with grace and ease?
Where we are with where we want to be with grace and ease. There's an Abraham Hicks quote that I like that has a certain ring of truth to me. It's, I'll never get it right. I'll never get it done. And if I extend that to everybody else, then that kind of feeds back into that notion where we started, where there's a tone of ignorance that can be transformed through curiosity into wisdom. So that's like the gracefulness is seeing that shift happen between those two identities. Gentility, gentleness is a quality. Yeah, and like I get ease as a mood, and like I'm going to take a moment to distill this. So just give me a moment to. You have to cut a bunch of dead air out here.
No problem.
There's the best I can do is support people as they take another step. And that's the image that's coming up is I consistently get this idea of being on a bullet train with people, like in terms of being in relationship or with respect to gentility and ease and grace. Like there's this idea of there's a huge railway system, and I have an opportunity to interact with people on a train with the people who are sitting across from me for a period of time. And for a while, I'm going in a similar direction as they are. And then at a certain point, I might get off that train. They might get off that train. And depending on which direction I'm facing as the train pulls away determines whether or not I feel gentility, grace, and ease, or if it's a sensation of pain, gripping, attachment. So I suppose it's giving myself permission to be fully in the moment with whoever I'm with, present company included, and just letting anything else that might occupy my mind fall away and generate a sense of appreciation for what I see in front of me, which is a person who's committed to their growth is remarkable. Like I'd say your superpower that I see consistently is your ability to create a witnessing role of yourself. Like something comes up and you're masterful in being able to, in the moment, step aside is the phrase that's there, but then just like notice like, all this is still going on. And I've got something occurring here that's giving me a space to allow myself the gentility I need to come into deeper contact with what makes me human. And certainly I'm manufacturing a story over here about what I see in you. But that's what if there's more of that, if I'm in listening and I'm witnessing, and then from that place, when you've expressed to me what you're attempting to experience, that allows me to take a step and contribute on my own path, on our shared path, supportive of your path. And then there's also an acknowledgement that this is temporary. So I would be remiss if I chose to engage with you in a way that was anything but easeful and gentle and originating from the heart.
I think we just came full circle of everything you said at the beginning in practice and showing and bringing it here and coming into my heart. And I'm actually kind of speechless at the moment. And as my interviewer role and hat on, that's not where I'm supposed to be, is the story that I'm telling myself, but it's where I'm going to let myself be. And I'm going to receive everything that you just said and displayed of the human that you are. Joshua, you're amazing. Thank you for being willing to be a part of the How to Be Human series and show us a little bit of what makes you human, the practices that you utilize, your growth that you've moved through. And if we are able to distill just a little bit of that information and what you've been through to share it with other people on their journeys and path and in their own realities, then it's a job well done for both of us. Hats off.
I've got one last thing to share, if I may.
You can.
Lovely. So I've done a lot of work in Peru with a particular group of indigenous folks, the Watoto tribe, who speak Quechua. I'm going to go back to Peru in July to work with my teachers who interact specifically with that tribe to do breath work, actually, to learn how to facilitate a type of breath work. But one of the things that I love that has contributed to my open-hearted practice is the way they greet one another in community. And they have a two-part exchange. The first part would be, I would say to you, hapaye con sonchis, which roughly translated means half of me is you. And I'd offer you coca leaves, as you just say, hapaye con sonchis. And then if you receive them, the response would be urpie suikuye, which roughly translates into, I give you doves from my heart. So if there's you might see that when I send text messages, like there's consistently a dove with a heart, or it's, in different profiles in different places or in my information. That's a way that I keep that alive is, all right, so this is an ancestral practice of connecting through the heart space that doesn't require a lot and actually grounds me in that very, very quickly on a repeating basis. So I just wanted to offer that and tell on myself a little bit, where it's like I'm kind of hiding some shamanic tradition in plain sight there, but half of me is you. And then when I land that in community with someone else, if the offering is doves from my heart, there's an instantaneous sensation of connection. So it's not about saying the Quechua phrase or creating mysticism around that. It's just genuinely coming to a conversation and seeing the person sitting across from me on Zoom and acknowledging that half of me in this interaction is the person that you are.
And I give you doves from my heart.
Received. I love you.
I love you too, Joshua. Thank you so much. What a beautiful January 5th, 2022 we've had here.
Totally agree. Thanks for the
May you have a wonderful rest of your reality this evening.